I call the member for Heffron.
Mr Acting Speaker, this bill is one of the greater threats to the judicial independence of this state. Cloaked in an attempt to manage a budget by the Treasurer, who seeks simply to conserve an amount of expenditure, in effect fundamentally impacts upon the very fabric of the Westminster system. The doctrine of separation of powers, the separation between the judiciary, the executive and the legislature, is fundamental to a Westminster system. And if honourable members think that somehow or other that I am talking out of my hat, I just want to invite members' attention to the Chief Justice of New South Wales. Now, the Chief Justice, the Honourable Chief Justice Bathurst, is not somebody known to make public speeches of a controversial nature. The Chief Justice, who serves that great office with considerable distinction, is not one that anybody would regard in relation to his history as a rabble-rouser. And I just wish to bring to the House's attention, published in the Sydney Morning Herald, attributed to the Chief Justice, Tom Bathurst has condemned the state government's plan to control judicial salaries as an attack on judicial independence, warning that taking it to its extreme, such logic could see judges' pays linked to conviction rates. It is not in the nature of the Chief Justice, nor any of his predecessors going back probably to 1788, that they speak in such strong terms publicly to a newspaper. When the most senior judicial officer in New South Wales, who in fact is the administrator of New South Wales for periods of time, say things of that nature, it is time for the other branches of government just simply to listen, because there are fundamentals at stake. And it is not about just controlling 2.5% pay increases given by the Remuneration Tribunal. It fundamentally goes to a particular principle. Now, I thought a year ago that enacting legislation that impacted upon some of the other independent statutory officers like the Solicitor General, Crown Prosecutors, or I had a peculiar interest at the time, public defenders, was in itself a huge interference in at least the administration of justice. I mean, the executive government trying to control, for example, the salaries of a public defender who spent every day attacking organs of the state in itself is somewhat peculiar. But to do it to judicial officers of this state is indeed a very serious thing to do. Now, the High Court has previously held that it is not, for example, for the judicial arm of government to impose financial obligations upon the executive government or upon the legislature. And it did so when the High Court was asked to consider whether the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights should apply to the New South Wales government in relation to a grant of legal aid, compelling the state to fund legal aid services to a particular accused person. And in fact, the High Court said that no, you cannot impose that obligation upon the executive government. Now, whilst the executive government and the Treasurer might be responsible to this House for the administration of expenditure, the practice has been in the history of this state not to have the executive government nor the Parliament directly control judges' salaries. And they have done so by establishing a remunerations tribunal for that purpose, so that there can be seen to be some statutory independence. If the Treasurer wanted to do it in a more subtle way, he could have more subtly amended the Act or provided for a regulation to give greater weight to the government's policy of trying to limit the expenditure of the state or of the judicial system. There are subtle ways to do it. You don't need to pull out your sledgehammer and in so doing interfere with the whole concept of judicial independence in the Westminster system. It is without doubt also, to do it this way, a reflection on the hard-working judicial officers of this state. And whilst we may sit in this House enacting legislation of such great complexity, we then wash our hands of it. Any of us who have spoken privately to some of the judicial officers in this state, particularly the highest court of this state, and anybody who knows what they are required to do on a daily basis, understands the almost oppressive workload of which they undertake. Most of the judges of our courts, for example, who in the view of some members of our community have excessive holidays, actually take their holidays to write their reserved judgments. We went through a stage in this state where judges were becoming ill and were in effect risking their own health in dealing with oppressive workloads. The bean counters out of Treasury have inveigled the criminal justice system and the justice system of this state that have caused an oppressive workload on judicial officers. And the Treasurer wishes to laugh about it, but I would invite the Treasurer just to spend 1 day or 2 days with a Supreme Court judge and see the sort of workload that they have to do. Pick up a law report and read the judgments of the Court of Appeal or Court of Criminal Appeal and see the amount of work and effort that is being undertaken by the judicial officers of this particular state. They don't complain in respect of it. They don't complain at all. I gather most of them are probably, when they do exercise their private democratic right, vote for those on the other side of the House. They don't complain in respect of it, and most of them are from the establishment that you represent. But when it comes time to interfering with the independence of the judiciary, when it reaches a stage where the Chief Justice of this state and this state's Lieutenant Governor condemn, according to the Sydney Morning Herald, the state government's plan to control judicial salaries, it is time for this House to listen. Now, the opposition is opposed to this concept because it is so fundamental. One of the things that we as members of this House are required to do is respect the institution of this House and to respect the Westminster system upon which our democracy represents. We're only here temporarily, but we are the trustees of the Westminster system. We are the trustees of the Doctrine of Separation of Powers. We are the trustees to ensure that we preserve and enhance it and give the perception that it is being enhanced. And what I suggest in respect of this particular bill is, if greater weight is to be given to government policy by the Remuneration Tribunal, there are better ways of doing it without sending the message that there is going to be an interference with the judicial independence of the judicial officers of the state of New South Wales.